My dad, 52M, chose his new wife, 34F, over me, 25F, and my sister, 19F. Now he wants our help. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am, caught in a family drama that feels like it's straight out of a soap opera. My dad has always been the type to prioritize his romantic relationships over his kids, but recent events have taken things to a whole new level. To give you some background, my parents divorced when I was just 4 years old. I don't remember much about their marriage, but I do recall a lot of shouting and door slamming. After the divorce, my mom moved across the country for work, and I stayed with my dad. He remarried pretty quickly to my stepmom, Mary, when I was 6. Mary wasn't terrible, but she definitely came first in Dad's eyes. I remember this one time when I was 12, and I accidentally spilled grape juice on Mary's favorite white blouse. It was an honest mistake. I tripped over our cat, Whiskers, who had a habit of weaving between people's legs. Instead of defending me or at least trying to calm Mary down, Dad just stood there and let her yell at me for what felt like hours. She called me clumsy, careless, and even suggested I did it on purpose. When I tried to talk to Dad about it later, he just said, "We have to keep Mary happy. She's the most important person in this family." That moment stuck with me for years. Things got even more complicated when my sister Emily was born when I was 6. I was excited to be a big sister, but it quickly became clear that Dad wasn't really interested in being a hands-on parent. He was always too busy with work or spending time with Mary. I ended up taking care of Emily a lot, which wasn't fair, but I didn't want her to feel as unloved as I did. I remember one particular incident when Emily was about 3. She had a high fever and was crying all night. I kept going to Dad's room to ask for help, but he and Mary just told me to handle it myself. I ended up staying up all night, putting cool cloths on Emily's forehead and trying to get her to drink water. The next morning, when Emily was finally feeling better, Dad praised me for being such a good big sister, without acknowledging that it shouldn't have been my responsibility in the first place. When I was 16, Mary left my dad for another guy. Her yoga instructor, of all people. Dad was devastated, but instead of turning to us for support, he threw himself into work and dating. It was like he was trying to prove something to himself or to Mary. He'd bring home a new girlfriend every few weeks, and we were expected to be nice to them no matter what. Some of them were okay, but others were really mean to us when Dad wasn't around. There was this one woman, Tiffany, who would accidentally break my things and then gaslight me about it. She once threw my favorite mug, a gift from my mom, into the trash and then told Dad I was being dramatic when I got upset about it. Dad believed her over me, of course. I moved out as soon as I turned 18. I couldn't take the revolving door of stepmom wannabes anymore. I got a scholarship to a state college and worked part-time to make ends meet. It was tough, but it was better than living at home. I took Emily with me when she was 16. She'd been begging me to let her live with me for months, and I finally gave in when I caught Dad's girlfriend at the time going through Emily's diary. Dad didn't even seem to notice we were gone most of the time. He'd call maybe once a month, usually to complain about his latest breakup or ask for money, which I never had to give. 2 years ago, Dad met Melissa. She's only 34, which is closer to my age than his. At first, I thought maybe she'd be different. She seemed nice enough, and she made an effort to get to know Emily and me. But then Dad started changing. He stopped calling us altogether unless Melissa was there. He'd cancel plans with us at the last minute if Melissa wanted to do something else. When we did see him, all he talked about was how amazing Melissa was, and how we needed to respect her as our new mom, which was gross, considering she's only 9 years older than me. The last straw was at Emily's high school graduation. Dad had promised he'd be there. Emily was so excited. She'd even saved him a special seat right up front. But then Melissa decided she wanted to go on a cruise that week. Instead of telling her no or trying to change the dates, Dad just didn't show up. He didn't even call. Emily was heartbroken. I found her crying in the bathroom after the ceremony, still in her cap and gown. After that, Emily and I decided to cut contact with Dad. We told him we were done being second best and that he needed to figure out his priorities. He got really angry and said we were being selfish and ungrateful. He even brought up all the times he'd sacrificed for us, like the time he missed a work conference to take me to the hospital when I broke my arm, which happened because he'd left me unsupervised at age 8 to go on a date with Mary. We haven't talked to him in over a year. It's been hard, but Emily and I have gotten even closer. I've been working as a teacher at a local elementary school, and Emily just started her freshman year of college. We've been doing okay on our own, supporting each other through the tough times. But last week, Dad showed up at my apartment out of the blue. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes all wrinkled, and he smelled like he hadn't showered in days. When I asked what was going on, he broke down crying right there in the hallway. Apparently, Melissa had been cheating on him with her ex-boyfriend for months. When Dad found out, she laughed in his face and said she'd never really loved him. She was just using him for his money. They got into a huge fight, and Melissa kicked him out of the house. The thing is, Dad had put Melissa's name on the deed to his house as a sign of trust. He'd also been paying for her expensive shopping habits and trips. He showed me his bank statements. He'd spent over $50,000 on her in the past year alone. Now he's lost everything. His house, his savings, even his car, which was in Melissa's name. Dad begged me to let him stay with us. He said he had nowhere else to go and that family should stick together. When I reminded him how he'd treated us, he got defensive and said that was all in the past and we should forgive him. He brought up times from when we were little, like the summer he taught me to ride a bike or the time he helped Emily with her science fair project, as if those few good memories could erase years of neglect and emotional abuse. I told him I needed time to think about it and that I had to talk to Emily first. He's been calling and texting nonstop since then, alternating between guilt-tripping us and making grand promises about how things will be different this time. He's even brought up the idea of suing Melissa, but I don't think he has a legal leg to stand on. Emily is furious and doesn't want anything to do with him. She says she's finally started to heal from all the hurt he caused, and she doesn't want to open those wounds again. Part of me feels bad for Dad, but another part of me thinks this is karma for how he's treated us over the years. I don't know if I can trust him not to hurt us again if we let him back into our lives. What should I do? Am I a terrible daughter if I don't help him? I'm worried that if we do help, he'll just fall for the next woman who comes along and abandon us all over again. But he is still our dad, and I feel guilty about potentially leaving him homeless. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. Thank you all for your supportive comments and advice. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and a lot has happened. I wanted to give an update on the situation with my dad. After talking it over with Emily, we decided to meet with Dad to hear him out. We chose a neutral location, a coffee shop near my apartment. When we got there, Dad already looked a bit better than he had when he first showed up at my place. He'd shaved and was wearing clean clothes at least. We sat down, and I told Dad that before we discussed anything else, we needed to talk about the past. I explained how hurt we'd been by his constant prioritizing of his relationships over us. I brought up specific instances: missing Emily's, graduation, canceling plans last minute, even that time with Mary and the juice incident when I was a kid. At first, Dad got defensive. He tried to justify his actions, saying he was just trying to keep the peace or that we were exaggerating things. But as we kept talking, he seemed to deflate a bit. He admitted that he'd made mistakes and said he regretted a lot of his choices. Emily, who had been quiet up until this point, suddenly spoke up. She told Dad about how she used to cry herself to sleep when she was little, wondering why he didn't love her enough to spend time with her. She talked about how she felt like she didn't even have a dad most of the time, and how much it hurt to see him dote on his girlfriends while ignoring her. She brought up a memory I had completely forgotten about. When Emily was 10, she had been cast as the lead in her school play. She had been practicing for weeks, so excited to show Dad her performance. On the night of the play, Dad promised he'd be there. Emily kept looking out into the audience, waiting for him to arrive. But he never showed up. Later, we found out he had gone to a concert with his girlfriend at the time. Emily said she never tried out for another play after that. I could see that Emily's words really hit Dad hard. He started crying, which made me uncomfortable because I'd rarely seen him show emotion like that before. He apologized over and over, saying he'd been selfish and stupid. We talked for hours. Dad explained more about what happened with Melissa. Apparently, she'd been manipulating him for a long time, isolating him from his friends and convincing him that we were the problem in his life. He said he realized now how wrong he'd been to believe her. He told us about how Melissa had convinced him to retire early from his job as an accountant, saying they could live off his savings and investments. She'd then systematically gone through his finances, convincing him to sell off stocks and dip into his retirement fund for her shopping sprees and vacations. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Dad also admitted that he'd been struggling with depression for years, even before he met Melissa. He said he'd always felt inadequate as a father and had used relationships as a way to avoid dealing with his own issues. It wasn't an excuse for his behavior, but it did help explain some things. In the end, we came to a decision. We told Dad that we weren't ready to have him move in with us. The trust just isn't there yet. But we also didn't want to leave him with nothing. So we made a deal. 1, we'd help him find a small apartment and pay the first month's rent. 2, he has to get a job within 30 days and start paying his own way. 3, he has to attend family counseling with us once a week. 4, no dating for at least 6 months while he focuses on rebuilding his relationship with us. 5, if he breaks any of these conditions, we're done. No more chances. Dad agreed to everything. He seemed genuinely grateful for the opportunity. We helped him move into a tiny studio apartment last week. It's not much, but it's a start. He didn't have many belongings left after Melissa kicked him out, so we took him to a thrift store to get some basic necessities. I'm still feeling conflicted about all of this. Part of me is hopeful that maybe this time will be different. But another part of me is waiting for the other shoe to drop. I keep thinking about all the times in the past when Dad would promise to change, only to revert back to his old ways as soon as a new woman came into his life. Emily is even more skeptical than I am. She's agreed to the family counseling, but she's made it clear that she's not expecting much. She told me privately that she's only doing this for my sake, which makes me feel guilty. I don't want her to feel pressured into a relationship with Dad if she's not ready. We had our first counseling session yesterday. It was intense. A lot of old hurts came up, and there were definitely some tears, mostly from Dad, surprisingly. The counselor seems good, though. She's not letting Dad off easy and is really making him confront his past behavior. One thing that came up in the session was Dad's relationship with his own father. Apparently, my grandfather was an alcoholic who was rarely around. Dad said he never learned how to be a good father because he never had a positive male role model. It doesn't excuse his actions, but it does provide some context. Dad has been applying for jobs nonstop. He's even agreed to take a night shift at a local warehouse if he can't find anything else soon. It's weird seeing him actually put effort into something that's not a relationship for once. He's been sending me his job applications to review, which is a strange reversal of our usual roles. I'm trying to stay cautiously optimistic, but it's hard. Every time my phone rings, I worry that it's going to be Dad telling me he's met someone new or that he's changed his mind about everything. But so far, he's sticking to our agreement. Emily is still keeping her distance, which I completely understand. She texts Dad occasionally, but hasn't seen him in person since that day at the coffee shop. I'm not pushing her either way. She needs to do what's best for her own mental health. That's where things stand for now. I'll update again if anything major changes. Thanks again for all your support and advice. It's really helped me feel less alone in all of this. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and I wanted to share how. Things have been going with my dad. To be honest, it's been a roller coaster of emotions. The good news is that Dad managed to find a job within the 30-day deadline we set. It's not glamorous. He's working as a night stalker at a grocery store, but he seems genuinely proud of himself for sticking to it. He's been paying his rent on time and even started putting a little money aside each week. It's strange to see him being responsible with money after years of watching him blow through his savings on girlfriends and impulsive purchases. We've continued with the family counseling sessions. They're still pretty intense, but I feel like we're making some progress. Dad's been more open about his past behaviors and the reasons behind them. He talked about how his own parents were never really there for him emotionally, and how he never learned how to be a good father. In one session, he brought up a memory from when I was about 5 years old. It was shortly after he and Mom had divorced, and I was having a hard time adjusting. He said he remembered me crying and asking why Mommy didn't love us anymore. Instead of comforting me, he'd gotten angry and told me to stop being a baby. He said he realizes now that he was projecting his own hurt and insecurities onto me, but at the time he just didn't know how to handle a crying child. Emily has started attending the sessions more regularly. She's still very guarded around Dad, but she's at least willing to be in the same room as him now. Last week, she actually laughed at one of his jokes, which felt like a huge step. It was a stupid dad joke about a penguin walking into a bar, but seeing them share a moment of levity was really nice. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. About 2 weeks ago, Dad called me in a panic. He'd run into Melissa at the grocery store where he works. She'd made some snide comments about him being a stock boy, and then tried to convince him to give their relationship another shot. She told him she'd made a mistake and that she missed him. Dad was really shaken up by it. I was worried he might backslide, but he surprised me. Instead of falling for Melissa's manipulation again, he called me for support. We talked for hours that night, and he kept saying how grateful he was for the second chance we'd given him. He said he never wanted to risk losing us again. Emily had a harder time with the Melissa incident. She was convinced Dad was going to run back to her and abandon us again. It took a lot of reassurance from both me and our counselor to calm her down. I think she's still waiting for Dad to mess up somehow. One positive development is that Dad has started showing more interest in our lives. He asks about Emily's classes and my work. He even remembered my birthday last week, something he hasn't done in years. He couldn't afford a big gift, but he made me a card and baked a slightly lopsided cake. It wasn't much, but the effort meant a lot. We've had a few family dinners at my place. They're still a bit awkward, but they're getting better. Dad's trying to learn how to cook, which has led to some pretty hilarious disasters. Last week, he tried to make spaghetti and somehow managed to set off the smoke alarm. But even when the food is terrible, it's nice to see him making an effort. I'm still cautious about fully trusting Dad again. There are moments when I catch myself waiting for him to revert to his old behaviors. But so far, he's been sticking to our agreement and really seems to be trying to change. Emily is slowly warming up to him. She agreed to let him come to one of her college volleyball games next month. It's a small step, but an important one. She's still hesitant about spending one-on-one time with him, but she's making an effort in her own way. As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm proud of the progress we've made, but I'm also trying to keep my expectations realistic. I know we have a long way to go before our family is truly healed. That's where things stand for now. I'll update again if there are any major developments. Thanks again to everyone who's been following our story and offering support. It really means a lot. Update 3. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been going with my dad and our family situation. Overall, I'd say we're still making progress, but it hasn't been without its challenges. Dad has been sticking to his job at the grocery store and even got a small promotion to shift supervisor. He seems to be taking pride in his work, which is nice to see. He's been telling us about some of the friendships he's forming with his coworkers, which I think has been good for him. Our family counseling sessions have continued, and they've been really eye-opening. We've been digging into a lot of deep-seated issues, and it's been tough but necessary. Dad's been confronting a lot of his past behaviors and working on understanding why he acted the way he did. It's not always easy to hear, but I appreciate his honesty. In one particularly emotional session, Dad opened up about his childhood. He told us about how his father would often disappear for days on drinking binges, leaving Dad to take care of his younger siblings. He said he always swore he'd be a better father than that, but somehow he ended up repeating the cycle of neglect in his own way. It doesn't excuse what he did, but it helps me understand a bit better. Emily has been more involved lately. She and Dad had a big breakthrough in one of our sessions when she finally told him how much it hurt her when he missed her graduation. Dad broke down and apologized sincerely, admitting that he'd been selfish and short-sighted. It was a really emotional moment for all of us. Emily later told me that it was the first time she felt like Dad really understood how much he had hurt her. We've been trying to do more family activities together. Last month, we went on a camping trip over a weekend. It was Dad's idea, actually. He remembered how much Emily and I used to love camping when we were kids, before he got too busy with work and relationships. The trip wasn't perfect. Dad forgot the mosquito repellent, and we all got eaten alive. But it was fun to spend time together outside of our usual settings. We even managed to laugh about some of the mishaps, like when Dad tried to start the campfire and ended up singeing his eyebrows. There have been some bumps in the road, though. Dad ran into one of his old girlfriends at a local bar. He was there for dinner, not drinking. She tried to convince him to go out with her, and for a moment, I think he was tempted. But he called me right after and told me what happened. He said he realized that no relationship was worth risking his progress with us. I was proud of him for that. But it also reminded me how fragile our situation still is. Emily is still having trust issues, which is understandable. She gets anxious whenever Dad doesn't answer his phone right away, worrying that he's found someone new and is going to disappear again. We're working on this in therapy, but it's a slow process. Our counselor has suggested some trust-building exercises, which we're trying to implement. As for me, I'm cautiously optimistic. There are days when I feel really hopeful about our family's future, and other days when I wonder if we're kidding ourselves. But overall, I think we're moving in the right direction. I've noticed that I'm less tense around Dad now, and I'm actually starting to enjoy our time together sometimes. Dad's been talking about wanting to make amends with some of his old friends that he pushed away during his relationship with Melissa. I'm encouraging him to take it slow and focus on our family first, but I think it's a good sign that he's thinking about rebuilding other relationships too. We're planning a small celebration for Dad's 6-month sobriety next month. He wasn't a heavy drinker before, but he's completely stopped since everything happened with Melissa. It feels like an important milestone to acknowledge. That's where things stand for now. It's not perfect, and we still have a long way to go, but we're making progress. Thanks again to everyone who's been following our story and offering support. Your encouragement has meant a lot during this challenging time,